There's something magical about that upper left corner of the graph. It's the most valuable real estate in the graph. So just take your centered aligned title, just nudge it over to be left aligned, and you'll get a little speed reading benefit there.
Hey there, and welcome to yet another episode of the World of Presentation podcast, brought to you by us at presentation agency 356 Labs. I'm Boris, the founder of the company and your host. And today we have someone who loves speaking, who loves teaching, who adores and appreciates design tremendously, and who is here to talk to us about slide design and data visualization. Emery is actually recording this one, but I'm reading as of now. You'll see that on the video, because I don't want to get this wrong. Emery is someone I have personally been following from maybe at least a year, and there is a reason for it. She works with some incredible organizations like the United Nations and Harvard University, has presented in more than 10 countries across the world, plus, I love her company's brand identity. Anne, welcome to the podcast. Before we start, again, I just want to say I just love the Depict Data Studio's brand. It's really, really cool. So now let me look into the camera and let's fire this up officially. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Boris. And what listeners don't know is that for the 15 minutes before this, I was troubleshooting with my webcam because, as Boris, you might have known from my website, there's purple and blue and green. It's supposed to be fun brand colors, not like boring data brand colors. So we're trying to get everything set up just right to showcase the brand. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Let's start with a brief introduction of who you are, because I can continue further on and say probably a lot more things, but let's hear it from you.
Great. So like Boris said, I'm Anne Emery, and I run Depict Data Studio, which is my own design and training company. And I've been working for myself now for about 7 years. So my business has shifted over the years, but I've focused very intentionally now on data visualization training. I think there's only one of me, and there's lots of reports and slideshows and dashboards in the world that need some data help. So what I try to do to have the biggest impact possible is do a lot of workshops that, of course, used to be in person, are now virtual, to just amp up everybody's skills so that they can make those dashboards and infographics and presentations themselves.
Yeah, and the world needs that so badly. I mean, I don't know what you're seeing, but based on your experience with so many organizations, I can say, and I can tell that you're probably faced with and seeing a lot of people that need help in that area.
Yeah, I keep worrying like once a year that if I train everybody to do better data presentations, I'll go out of business, which is kind of the goal, actually, to train people up so much that I'm no longer needed. But just when I start to worry about that, I'll see a slide deck that's like all bullet points, font size 8, blue text on a green background. So yeah, I think a lot of us have seen presentations like that. And I know I've definitely made some in the past too. So
I have done them too. So yeah, we're all guilty of that stuff. However, we changed, right? We moved on. So we learned the better way. And now, because you're speaking so much, because you're delivering conference presentations, webinars, obviously podcasts, you're training people in like the corporate world and outside of the corporate world. How do you personally approach your own presentations? Like, what is the algorithm behind it? Like, is there an algorithm even? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, I love this question, and I'm curious to see how you'd answer it or how other guests have answered it too. But because I've given so many presentations, I have gotten it down to a science, to an algorithm, as you say. So I have already like set online courses that's a conversation for another day, how I've figured out how to run those to make sure people actually participate and get their work reviewed and so on. But I'm thinking of my client trainings when I answer this question. So, in the past, it would take me days to prepare for maybe a full day workshop. I remember my my first full day workshop ever, I think it was in Uganda in 2014. I had done 1 hour talks, I had done half day talks, but this was going to be several full day workshops. I probably spent like 2 weeks straight creating new slides, creating handouts, creating data files for them to practice with on their laptops, and I remember thinking, this isn't sustainable. I can only do so many workshops if it's taking like 2 weeks to prep for each one. But of course, I had to create, you have to create slides from scratch. That takes time. But nowadays, what I do for my main data visualization training is it's broken up into 6 steps or modules where I teach a technique and then they practice. I teach a technique and then they practice. And after each module, I have a before and after makeover of the group's work too. So even though every presentation is different, because I have clients that work for the government, for universities, for nonprofits and foundations in the social sector, all their topics are different. Yeah. But as I'm preparing, it helps me know that I have a structure. It's like, I share some best practices. We look at their work that I've pre-done. I share some best practices. We look at their work. So that's helpful to know that I have specific points, 6 points where I'm inserting activities that are custom to them. Another one, Boris, are you a PowerPoint user, Keynote user? What's your tool of choice?
I'm a fan of all of the platforms, to be honest. Our agency works with everything. We look at it from, okay. I'm a PowerPoint MVP, obviously, but I'm very, how can I say it? I'm not that romantic, if you wish, in regards to the tool. I'm not like the Apple fan that will only buy Apple, or Microsoft's fan that will say everything that's Apple is bad, So for me, we always look at it from the business point of view and say, hey, these are all tools, which one we can use for this business case? So yeah, most of the times PowerPoint seems to be the default answer and the go-to answer because of so many reasons, obviously. But we have done keynotes, prezis, like many things. PowerPoint still dominates though.
So I'm mostly a PowerPoint user. So I'm going to give you some tech tips that I use. Tell me if these are possible in Keynote. I think they are. I think these are universal, but what I'll do in my slide deck is what I used to do. Here's what not to do. I used to, let's say I'm prepping for a client presentation. I would open a brand new blank slide deck. And then I would open maybe the 3 to 5 most recent ones I'd done. So imagine my computer has 50 million screens open, and I would copy and paste slides together. And that just took a lot of work. I would forget which file I was in, that was too much. So what I do now is I have one master file.
Yeah.
And it has all my slides. So it literally has 1,000 slides in it. And I have different workshops I do, but my main data visualization one is 1,000 slides. And then what I go through and do is I hide and unhide slides so that everything is in one headquarters. It's in one file. I don't save over the same file. I do a save as and save with the client's name and the date so that if the file gets corrupt, I haven't lost everything. But is hiding and unhiding, is that a thing in Keynote? It's gotta be, right?
Of course.
Okay, great.
Google
and
Slides
then,
also,
Okay, good. I'm glad I'm speaking to an MVP. So you know all the ins and outs of many software programs.
Just the PowerPoint. I don't know the ins and outs of Keynote and Google Slides in the same way as with PowerPoint. And to be very honest with everyone that's listening or watching this, by the way, just for your information, this will be the first episode on our podcast where we are actually going to publish the video. So you see, that's a special one. To be honest, I'm trying to not even get into the details of PowerPoint anymore because, we have a team for that that's pushing the limits there, and I try to push some other limits. Let's put it this way.
Well, I wonder if hiding and unhiding is a thing in Google Slides. I don't know. Just the idea of keeping all the slides in one file, and then you can hide and unhide to choose which ones are most relevant for your audience. It sounds so simple because it is. It simplifies your entire preparation process leading up to a presentation. You just get to think about what does this group really need to see? And what's kind of mediocre that's not as relevant to their needs. So those are the biggies, just inserting their custom activities and hiding and unhiding slides as I go.
Yeah.
It's pretty
We have done
fast.
this. Yeah. Oh, by the way, we have done this for our sales offerings. When we have to prepare an offer, we have all the options, more or less, all the possible trainings, all the possible scenarios that we as the people that are selling the services can get into, and then we just hide and unhide and export and further customize, obviously, the offer, and then just export to PDF, boom, and it's over. So that idea that you're using for your trainings is like works like a charm for everything, like not just for trainings, for sure.
It's not that every client proposal or training is the same. It can't be. It's supposed to be custom to their needs. But I think just as we as the presenters, if we have kind of a recipe in our process, I think we should have a process for prepping. You shouldn't just be sitting down to a blank screen and saying, oh, I'm making up a brand new presentation every time. Like, that's not what experienced trainers should be doing, I don't think.
For sure. Okay, let's get into, we already touched on the slide part. The slides are a very, like, it is an interesting world out there because many people present with, they call and say that they have slides, but do they really have slides? What do you see? Are they really presenting with very simple slides which are super visual, etc.? Or do you still see in the world that you're living in with your customers slides that are a little bit more detailed, a little bit more text heavy? What's happening in there?
Yeah, I work with some really smart, highly educated groups. So a lot of university professors, public health epidemiologists with PhDs. So of course, a lot of us are trained to have details and be really thorough. So I see a lot of very thorough slides. Are you familiar with Nancy Duarte of the Duarte Design? Okay, I wasn't sure if she was a big name just in the United States or outside.
No,
so she has this great term, Slidedocs. Have you heard of that? Okay, so the Slidedocs it's like you're using your slide software, PowerPoint, Keynote, Google Slides, whatever your tool of choice is. You're using it to do lots of things because it's so easy to use. Like, Word is great for narrative reports with all of its paragraphs, but once you start adding visuals, it's tricky to use Word for like handouts, infographics, the quick one-pagers. You drag the images around the screen, everything bounces around. It gives me a headache. So I think a lot of us have that experience, and we try to use our slide software like PowerPoint for a little bit too much. So we create these things in PowerPoint that are not quite presentation slides, but they're not quite a standalone document or report. So I see a lot of these Slidedocs that are kind of in this weird wishy-washy area. There's not enough text to be a standalone document. There's no like introductory sentence. That information's missing, or it's just a quick bullet point, but it's like, tell me more, I need more information. There's not enough text for a document, but there's too much text for a presentation when the speaker's voice is supposed to be the core of the presentation. So I see a lot of the Slidedocs wishy-washy design.
Okay, so what are the, like, if we have to talk about the main differences between the two formats, because some people will call it Slidedocs. Also, I think that Nancy actually was, I don't know, for me, she coined both terms. I'm very much confused which one exactly is the correct one here, because probably she and Gar Reynolds coined those two terms. Who knows how many years ago even. But what are the, like, if we have to separate those, what are the main differences between slides and Slidedocs or Slidedocs, so that people can, who are listening to this one, navigate and say, wait a minute, maybe I'm not presenting with slides. Like, if I need to send a presentation over email, maybe I need to go this road. Like, what are the top 3 to 5 things that are different in those two formats?
Yeah, I don't know who coined those. I think it's Nancy. In my mind, Nancy Duarte came up with Slidedocs, standalone documents, slide decks for presentations. I'm thinking of my pile of books back here. I've got Gar's newest book. Side note, I got to meet him in Japan when I was there speaking almost exactly a year ago. He's amazing. He's got a couple just amazing books out there that are on the shelf. So who knows? If somebody listening knows who coined these terms, we want to give credit where credit's due. But the 5 that I teach people about, because they're most relevant with the groups I work with, these are the ways to distinguish slide docs versus slide decks, right? Avoid the slide you meant. So it's the titles and headings are supposed to vary a little bit. We can talk about each of these if you want more info. The amount of text should vary. The font size should vary.
Okay.
The style of the visuals, data storytelling style of the graph should vary. And the length, like the number of slides or pages, should vary. Those are the key characteristics I see come up over and over and over and over again.
Let's go quickly through those 5. I think that we can go very quickly through those and paint the big picture here. What is what? Right.
Okay, so distinction number 1, the titles and headings. So in a slide doc, a standalone document, like the PDF version of your slides that you share as an email attachment before or after the meeting, or someday when we go back to in-person settings, it might be the handout that's on the table in front of people. So slide docs, I recommend takeaway titles, meaning it's not just the topic up there, but it's actually the so what in a quick phrase, like XYZ increased since last year, not just XYZ or something, that there's some takeaway message. Where in slide decks, you could have just the generic topical title, like just XYZ, and then with your voice, you say, and this increased this past year. I might revise my advice on that one, because I think busy audiences prefer having the takeaway message in both places too. People are, our to-do lists are a mile long these days. So takeaway titles, especially important for slide docs though. Okay, that's number 1, the titles and headings and how they can vary. Number 2, the amount of text. This is probably the most obvious. So for slide docs, I recommend full sentences, even paragraphs. It's a report that just happens to be made in slide software like PowerPoint. Where for slide decks, to accompany the speaker during a live presentation, as little text as possible. There's rules of thumb out there. Everybody's heard like 3 bullet points, 5 words per bullet. I don't have any hard and fast rules, just as little text as possible. It could be a large photo with 2 or 3 words on top of it would be perfectly sufficient if it's accompanying the speaker. Titles and headings, amount of text, font size. People ask me this a lot, like, what's your minimum font size? And it depends for a slide doc or a slide deck. So for slide docs, they're reports at their core. So report font, size 11 or 12. Slide decks for presentations, I would say at least size 18, but that's for your little stuff, even like a footnote or a data source. My headings on my slides, I use, I think 50. My graphic design friends, they go really big. Sometimes they'll have size 100. So it's, really, really big, so that if you're presenting in that huge conference room, people in the back of the room can see it. Or nowadays with virtual settings, so many people join virtual meetings from their phones. It has to be big enough that they can see it on their tiny little phone screen. So at least 18, I would say. Yeah. Probably bigger than that.
3 out of 5. Let's move on to the 4th one.
Number 4 is visuals. So the types of graphs that you have. Now the term data storytelling is used different ways, but here's how I define it. So for slide docs, I would say you need a storytelling graph, meaning there's an intentional dark light contrast on the graph. What's an example I was thinking about? Like COVID vaccination rates by country over time. Let's say you have a standard line graph. There's going to be tons and tons of little lines showing vaccination rates over time. So it looks like a spaghetti line graph. There's like all these lines, they're crisscrossing and overlapping. If you put them all in a different color, and you've got 20 colors or 200 colors, it's going to be impossible to read. It looks like a pile of spaghetti. So picking out one key finding is going to just draw the viewer's attention to that one thing. Our brains can't help but notice darker colors. So maybe it's something like you have a bunch of little gray lines and the median is darker, or you have a bunch of gray lines and the country with the highest vaccination rates is darker, or the lowest, but you pick out one key thing you want your audience to focus on.
Yeah.
So storytelling visuals for Slidedocs, I think, are critical. And just, you can have several visuals per page in a slide doc because, you could have one graph on the left and one graph on the right. It's still readable. People are taking their time to read each page. For slide decks for presentations, I'd recommend just one graph per slide to focus people, like not two side by side, just one at a time, so that the graph you're talking about is the graph people are looking at, and we're not losing their attention by accident.
Yeah.
And then lastly, length. The length for slide docs, length usually does matter. Usually in a lot of office settings, we have they're rules, but they're made up rules. Like, this document can only be 5 pages, or it can only be 10 pages. And I think that's because maybe people used to print a lot. You want to save the trees. I don't know. There's just these arbitrary rules about page limits, which I get, and that's fine. But in slide decks for presentations, use as many slides as you need. You're clicking through them at a faster pace. You're not slurring your speech. You're not like talking really, really, really fast to get through everything. You're just showing less per slide and keeping the pace nice and quick. So sometimes people freak out, like a moment ago when I said, I have 1,000 slides in my data visualization slide deck, but for each workshop I do, maybe I show 200 of them. Maybe they're only on the screen for a couple seconds before I click through quickly to the next thing. So I wouldn't worry about the number of slides. Usually the more slides, the better, though, to keep the pace a little bit quicker.
Yeah, especially nowadays online, the more slides we have, the better the engagement is, because something changes, right? But I would also argue and completely support the point on the documents and the slide docs, or the slide documents and the pages there. Now, we have seen with our customers how, just for example, when you receive a file like this over your email, just think about the busy end user. Not everybody, obviously, even though a lot of people nowadays who say they are busy, probably everyone will say they are busy, but if you're sending these to your manager, vice president, or whatever, C-level executive, those people don't have time, right? Or enough time. So when they see, for example, the first thing they see is, okay, there is an attachment, but then the first thing they see is it's 10 megabytes. That's a red flag. Like, if it's 10 megabytes, that will be a huge file. Let me keep it for tomorrow, right? Tomorrow becomes the next day becomes 2 weeks after, and on and on and on. And it's the same, I think, with the page number. Once you figure out the compression or make the file smaller, then I open it. But then if I see that there are 132 slides that are waiting for me, then I'm like, oh, okay, tomorrow. Let me go back tomorrow. And then again and again. So yeah, for documents, I think it's super important, of course, depending on the audience, to keep it shorter than slide decks, for sure, for sure. Anything else on that topic?
Those are the 5 main ones. In a perfect world, we'd have both for every presentation. You'd have the handout.
That's exactly right.
And the presentation slides.
That's exactly right. In a perfect world, we will definitely have both. Anyway, we're not living in a perfect world, unfortunately. And I don't know for you, but I think that we're not going to live in a perfect world for at least 10 more years. At least 10 more years. Like, if something, I'm not sure I can even imagine it. Like, how would that change at all? Like, I don't know. Anyway, visualizing data. Huge part of your work, huge part of nowadays presentations. What are people getting wrong there? Like, what are the top mistakes when people approach, when people plan, or when people try to visualize data so that it communicates a message? Like, what can you advise them to probably not do, let's say?
Yeah, well, this is what I do for a living. So let me give you the first couple quick wins that come to mind. And I was thinking about what you just said about audiences being so busy. And that's at the core of the tips I'm about to give, because people are very hardworking. They're very highly educated. I think we just don't have the time. And I think especially as the data creators, the data analysts, the presentation makers, we're usually, we're very experienced, sometimes experts in our topic area, but just remembering that our audience they specialize in some other topic areas. So even if they have really good intentions to understand our content, they might be encountering it for the first or second time. So these are some tips to just kind of speed up their comprehension, knowing they live in a busy world. Okay, so just off the top of my head, let me think of like 3 or 4 quick wins for you. One, this is so easy, rounding decimal places to the nearest whole number. There are exceptions.
Of course, yeah.
Numbers under 1%, like 0.4%, I wouldn't round that down to 0. I would show 0.4%, but in the vast majority of scenarios, rounding is perfectly sufficient. Yeah. And I think leaving decimal places can give people a false sense of accuracy. And in the real world, there's all sorts of issues with data collection. You know, even though we have great intentions, data is never collected perfectly. There are always data cleaning, you know, choices that have to be made. So I don't want to make people think like, this is 33.479%. It's like, just round it, it's fine. So I think about too, whether I would want a decision maker in a business or a government agency to make a real decision based on that number. Like, should they fire or hire staff based on that decimal place? Like, does the 0.2 really matter for staffing decisions? Should they reallocate a budget based on that 0.2%? You know, should there actually be a real world action? Probably not, probably in most of our scenarios. So rounding to the nearest whole number, such a quick win for a lot of us.
I need to add something here. You know, when I saw that the first time, when I saw an exception to that rule the first time, and it made sense. I would agree that it made real sense, because we were training an organization. Wait, how do you call this? Like, we were training the people inside of a nuclear plant. And there, these decimal points really mean something. And I mean, really mean
life or death, right? Like for real world decisions, of course.
And I actually asked them to round, and they were like, well, if we round it, we're actually not communicating the same things, okay? So can we not round that? I was like, tell me more. And they explained to me the difference between like 0.1 or etc. And I was like, okay, we are not rounding this. Obviously, that's clear. Okay, something else. Let's go. I just remember that moment in the past when we were invited to a nuclear plant, and it was like, okay, that is a very interesting place to train people.
Agreed. Yeah, it is. It's definitely industry specific. I'm thinking about a utility company I work with. So they manage the water and sewage system for their state. And with water quality issues, being off by a decimal place either means the water is healthy or it's not. So yeah, agreed. But I think in most of our offices, rounding is going to be fine.
Yeah.
Okay, what's another quick win? This one's so easy too. Use a mix of uppercase and lowercase letters. No more all caps. I see that in things like headings, subheadings, graph titles. Sometimes it's because the way that we get our data, let's say you download it from a database, the variables come out in all capital letters. I would recommend going through, doing some data cleaning behind the scenes and changing it to title case or sentence, you know, have a variety. And that's just for speed reading reasons. There's research showing that it takes us a little bit longer to read all caps. It's something about they have the same baseline and the same kind of height. They're all the same height. And it just takes our brain longer to make sense of. Our brains do better with variety, tall and short letters. So that's a quick win.
That's an interesting one.
And another one is alignment. Centered text. Like I see a lot of graphs, a lot of software programs do this. I love Excel. I use Excel for a lot of things. I love Tableau. Like there's so many great software programs that by default, they center the graph title above the graph. I don't know why. It's just been the default setting for decades or something. I don't know. A lot of us in the United States, at least, our graduate school papers were taught to center the graph titles. It's just, I don't know why. It's just the way it's been for decades or centuries or something. But left alignment is actually faster to read. And that's because in Western cultures, we, you know, think of how you're reading a page. You start in the upper left corner and you read across, And then you go to the second line and you read across. There's something magical about that upper left corner of the graph. It's the most valuable real estate in the graph. So just take your centered aligned title, just nudge it over to be left aligned, and you'll get a little speed reading benefit there.
Perfect. Top 3. Should we keep it to top 3 or do we go further?
How much time do you have? I mean, there's the obvious, like,
no,
don't have too many slices in a pie chart. Don't have all bar charts. Also don't have all maps. I work with a lot of development groups that do work all around the world, like United Nations, USAID, State Department. Like they have so many maps. We don't want the redundancy of the same visual. There's dozens of visuals people could use. So it's not like using variety just to use variety, but making sure that you're making sense of the data in a way that's, really interesting. Like you have a mix of, maybe some simple pie charts to show part to whole, bar charts to show this category compared to this category to this category, some maps to show geography, some time series charts like line charts, that you're analyzing the data from a very thoughtful, sophisticated perspective, and then that's reflected in your graphs.
And
we'll stop there. I could talk about this till midnight.
Yeah. One more. Do you still see people just plain and simple copy pasting tables from Excel and just leaving it there?
Like copying and pasting from Excel into PowerPoint?
I need to present tomorrow. I have the Excel, I have the data, so I need the presentation. Well, then that means that I will just copy paste the whole Excel table or part of the Excel table and leave it on my slide and it's done, right? Do you see that?
Yeah, and I see screenshots, right? So they have a big Excel table, and they've got lots of rows and lots of columns because it's their Excel table. Of course, that's where they did all the analysis, and it can't fit in their PowerPoint slide. So they take a screenshot, and by the time it goes into PowerPoint, it's a little blurry, it's a little small. I see that. I don't want to pick on the accounting people and the finance people. That was the career I almost went into because I knew I liked data and spreadsheets. So I thought, okay, I'll be an accountant, or I'll work with retirement planning or something, So my heart goes out to those people. I'm very connected to them, but that's where I see it the most often, I think, is all of the like budgeting spreadsheets where people take a table and plop it into PowerPoint. So it happens.
It's still happening, obviously. People that are listening to this podcast, most of them are not designers, right? However, in order for you to build at least a little bit better slides and data visualizations, you still need to get the basic. You need to be interested in the topic, I think. There is no way around it. You just need to know at least the fundamentals of design. Not slide design, not data visualization design, but just plain and simple design. Or maybe you would say slide design also and data viz. Like if you have to mention a few resources, books, courses, websites, excluding yours, obviously excluding our work, etc., like which are going to be those things that people should take a look at in the next few years or months, let's say, that will give them that boost of confidence that they know, let's say, the fundamentals and they can apply it afterwards. Like what were the best resources that you personally saw or consumed in the last few years?
Anybody watching this on YouTube is going to be laughing because I'm like looking down because my microphone is actually on a stack of books right now. So, so actually one good one that's, holding up my mic is Cole Nussbaumer's Storytelling with Data. That's a great starter. That's going to be especially for people in data roles who want to master data visualization. So not for like the designers learning data. And actually, speaking of like kind of design, non-data people learning about data would be.
Plus, we had Cole on our podcast a few months ago.
Oh yeah? Okay, perfect. I love Cole. She's amazing. And then I have Alberto Cairo's functional. So Alberto is interesting because he's got another one too. How Charts Lie. It's the blue one back there.
Yeah, that one is.
Wow. I have insomnia lately, so I've been reading a chapter at a time at the wee hours of the morning of Alberto's book. It's keeping me sane. And his books are interesting because they're written for non-data people. He's a data journalist. Well, he was a journalist and kind of had to learn about data and graphs. So I think that's just a really interesting way to help you think about just, being trained in one industry, and kind of data affects all of us now. So we all need to know about data.
Yeah.
And
Any
then,
other?
gosh, what would be in like the designer realm for kind of becoming a designer? Probably Gar Reynolds' books. Probably. He's got a lot of really great screenshots in there of just simple slides. It's a very Zen-like approach, like very minimalist approach of just show the essentials and strip away everything that doesn't have to be there.
Yeah, the presentations and design books, I think. The third one, I think, is the latest, I think. But when you said How Charts Lie of Alberto Cairo, who was still not on the podcast, I need to invite him at some point, or very soon, we'll see. Alberto, if you're listening to this one, you'll be invited very, very soon. So when I got that How Charts Lie, I thought that it's a data visualization for the data viz person, And then when I read it, I was like, this book has to be read by everybody. Like, by everybody. It is just a read that everyone needs to read that book. Like, it has so many interesting case studies that showcase how media, let's say, are not communicating the story that they need to communicate, or are missing the point of it. It was probably one of the best books on data in general that I have read in the last probably 3 years. I don't know. But yeah, I was deeply impressed. Did you manage to finish it?
No, I'm only a few chapters in because I'm reading it with half brain power in the middle of the night. But yeah, it's great. I think it's more for like consumers of data viz, but even as a creator of data viz, I'm finding a lot of value in it. And I consume graphs all the time. Like you said, all the bad media examples where you think, oh, I knew something was off about that chart, but he teaches us exactly what's off about it.
Yeah, I think that every business professional has to see that one. Like marketing people, HRs, designers, like everyone should see that book. Anyway, we ask a question. We ask every single one of our guests a very interesting question, or at least we believe it's an interesting one. Maybe you will now say Alberto. So let's see. We always ask in the last 20 episodes, who should be our next guest? Somebody that made a great impression on you, someone that's connected to the industry, someone that's in the business world, but you saw him or her presenting in a really great way and impressed you tremendously. Who is that person for you? Like, do you have name popping up already?
Yeah, I do. So I mentioned I like Cole. She's amazing. I consider her a personal friend. Gar is great. Alberto is great. Let me give a shout out though to somebody else I haven't mentioned so far is John Schwabish. He blogs at policyviz.com. And I love his approach because he's a PhD economist who used to work for the federal government. He now works for a think tank and also has his own consulting firm in all of his spare time. But he also focuses on the data side of presentations. Like he works on a lot of reports, but he has a lot of resources, very presentation focused as well. Yep. John Schwabish. Shout out to John.
Yeah, I will try to get him on the podcast finally. I think I tried to get him like when the podcast was starting and I was not successful for some reason. I have to check what happened there. But now I'll try again. I would definitely love to have him on the podcast together with Alberto for sure at some point.
Well, John just finished a book up.
Really?
I know he just got the box of books in the mail. So I haven't written a book. I have many ebooks, but the book publishing process, from what I've heard from people, is very
lengthy.
It's a thing. Yeah, it's a big thing. So
yeah, I know he has a book that was aimed at scholars and people like that, how to build effective slides, but I don't know for another one.
His are called,
I really don't know.
Better Presentations is the one that's on my shelf. Yeah, and I don't know the title of the next one coming out, but it's about chart choosing.
Oh, right. So it's another one for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Where can people find more about what you're doing and what is the best place for them to connect? These are the
Yeah. So the best place to connect is probably on my good old website and blog posts and newsletters. So it's depictdatastudio.com. If you click on the blog tab, I've been blogging for a decade. So there are literally hundreds of resources going more in depth about what we've talked about. I have courses too, especially, but the blog and newsletter are a great starting place.
No LinkedIn? Hello?
I'm on LinkedIn. Yep. If you Google Ann K. Emery, you'll find me. I'm the only Ann K. Emery doing data visualization out there.
All right. And I personally am a fan of the YouTube channel. Just saying. So just saying.
Yeah.
So I'll make sure that I link the link. I link the LinkedIn. I put your LinkedIn profile in the show notes together with the website and the YouTube channel. And I think that will be, it will be more than okay.
Yeah. Yeah. The YouTube channel, I started YouTubing in, I think 2011 or 2012. I don't usually have insomnia, only a couple of times in my life, but I literally built that during insomnia because I was working during the day, doing graduate school at night. And then I think I was just so stressed. I would come home and de-stress by making YouTube videos. So many of those were recorded 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. as a distraction from my research methods and statistics classes in grad school. So people can get a kick out of seeing me, a decade ago teaching about data viz and Excel online. I have a lot more recent videos too, but I think the archives are fun to look through.
Who did the website?
Oh, on my YouTube channel. So if you just look on YouTube for Ann K. Emery.
Yeah, but who did the website design? Your website design is really cool. Who did that?
Oh, thanks. It's a group based in Indianapolis in the United States called Kicks Digital Marketing. K-I-C-K-S, Kicks Digital Marketing.
Yeah, and these guys did a great job there.
Thanks.
Wow. Perfect. And we can talk a lot about, we can talk for, I don't know, as you mentioned before we started the recording, probably for many, many hours for each and every single topic. But yeah, we don't have that privilege right now. Maybe we can record another one after a few months or something. Plus, there is a surprise for everyone who is listening to this one that Anne is actually going to join us in the next edition of our conference. She's actually, I don't know, you're in the top 3 speakers for 2022. That's some great news here. So we have very few people confirmed still because, well, we're recording this on February 1st, 2021. The first event still hasn't passed, but we are already trying and asking people who would join for 2022, and you were one of the people to accept. So again, thanks for joining for 2022. It will be great to have you. It will be great for sure.
Thanks so much.
Perfect. Okay, I will make sure that we link absolutely everything in the show notes. Your LinkedIn, the website, and the YouTube channel. We can talk, obviously, and we can continue the discussion, obviously, for hours and hours. But I always say, hey, if you have any questions, let us know in the comments wherever you found that podcast. If it's on LinkedIn, shoot us a question there. If it's Facebook, shoot us a question there. And I'll make sure that I'll tag Anne so that both of us will reply. Okay? Are you okay with that plan?
Sounds great.
Perfect. In the meantime, check out also our website 356labs.com, not 365labs.com, to see what we are doing and how we can help you and your company write, as we like to say, write, design, and deliver truly effective presentations. Obviously, Anne is joining Present to Succeed. That's the name of the conference. Check the conference out too. So thanks for listening, and in case you found this episode to be useful, subscribe to the podcast, and why not even leave us a review on iTunes or share it with a friend. We would appreciate it. Thanks again, and see you in the next one. Bye.